Okay, welcome to a special Thanksgiving edition of Catch and Cook. We're going to bone out a whole hog and stuff it with mushrooms and duck, among other things, and make a cranberry sauce to go along with it. So here's a 17-inch female hog that we kept. Here it is,
Oh yeah.
clean, scaled, and gutted. And we're gonna debone it now. So I actually found this knife in my knife roll and I completely forgot that I had it. And I'll leave a link in the description below, but it works pretty well for this job. So what I'm doing here is I'm cutting through the rib bones first, and then I'm filleting the fish from the bottom. And the most important thing here is don't go through the skin at the top of the fish, obviously, because we're gonna stuff it. And just take your time. You're gonna end up with the backbone completely exposed.
There we go.
Don't tread on me,
Flip it.
USA, Captain Vince Russo.
Nice.
It's a little plug.
He's gonna get like a
He's gonna get
couple
it.
dozen orders
Yeah.
out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think I got this knife like years ago after watching some YouTube videos of that guy, Captain Vince Russo. I think he was a pro fishmonger at one point. Anyway, use your scissors, snip off the backbone, and just keep in mind how close you are to the dorsal fins. So you don't want to go through that side of the fish. And these pieces we're going to save for stock, or possibly a hog chowder episode coming up.
I wish there was like a sort of patch kit for this. Cut a hole in it. Wow.
Alright, so now we're removing the rib cage, and I basically go ahead and just make the cut along the rib bones, and I just rip that whole piece of meat out. You'll see a little better when I do the other side.
Rib bones, pin bones,
Mm-hmm.
stock.
There you go, just put pressure on the skin and then rip the rib bones out, and finally we're going to remove the pin bones. And for this you can use pliers. I have a pair of fishbone tweezers, and that's basically it. So now your fish is boned out. You see the different pieces we took out of the fish, and is ready for the stuffing.
Stuffing.
Done.
So very quickly, the stuffing is 3 kinds of mushrooms: is woodier, shiitake, and button mushrooms. You can use just portobellos or all buttons. The mirepoix would be shallots, garlic, and thyme leaves. And finally, some fresh parsley. And so here's a duck that my cousin bought from the Chinese market, and I was going to use pancetta, which will work beautifully in this dish, but since we have duck, I basically stripped the meat and skin off of a few pieces of duck and just chopped it up. Alright, so there you go. That's basically your mise en place for the stuffing. And we're gonna start the mushrooms in a hot, dry pan. So no oil, no butter. Dry pan, you season it with salt. The salt and the heat is gonna draw the moisture out. And once the water is pretty much cooked out of the mushrooms, then you add about a tablespoon of grapeseed oil. And now you're sauteing. And now your aromatic veg goes in. And again, salt, pepper. You cook that until it's fragrant, and then you add your duck meat, which is already cooked. So you're just kind of toasting it through. Just a small pat of butter. And we are slightly over seasoning this stuffing because, you know, it's going inside the fish. So it's going to help flavor the flesh of the fish once it's cooked. And then finally your parsley goes in off the heat, and that's your stuffing. You want this to cool to at least room temperature before you stuff the fish.
What is the room temperature?
Alright, so here's our fish, and we're going to stuff it now. Needless to say, this is quite a delicate process. You don't want to overstuff the fish. You also don't want to tie these strings too tightly, because then it's going to cut into the flesh when it cooks. It's very much like Thanksgiving, just a lot of stress. The results are usually worth it, but you're afraid that, you know, it's going to overcook, it's going to explode in the oven. I generally shy away from stuffing things inside other things. So there is my cousin Mark giving me a hand or a finger, help me tie the first knot. And again, don't squeeze the fish with the butcher's twine. Alright, once you finish tying your knots, you snip the tag end, and you're ready to roast your fish. So your oven should be preheated to 450. We're going to finish at 500, the final 5 minutes of cooking. Alright, so we transfer the fish to a foil lined baking tray that's been oiled. And here I'm basting the fish in duck fat. So this is just the fat at the bottom of the Chinese roast duck container. And make sure you get the whole fish. Then we will properly season with salt and pepper. And duck fat is an amazing fat to cook with. Is rich, but it's quite neutral. In any case, here I'm salt peppering the fish, and it goes in the oven at 450. We're gonna check it after 12 minutes.
Good luck.
Alright, so now we're gonna make our cranberry wine sauce. And just a dry pan, table sugar, and we're gonna caramelize the sugar. And this is optional, it's a few anise pods. And your cranberries go in. I think that was maybe 3 tablespoons of sugar to 12 ounces of cranberries. And then a splash of wine, some water. Your classic cranberry sauce is just simple syrup. I find if you caramelize the sugar, it just gives it sort of a deeper flavor. And then that is set aside. You could just serve it with that sauce, it's fine, but I like a little bit of a more savory note. So this is a cup and a half of red wine. This is a drinkable Merlot. And you reduce that down to a syrup. And then 3/4 of a cup of chicken stock. This is a light, homemade, very low sodium chicken stock. You reduce this down to a syrup. And now you can hold both sauces until your fish is done. This red wine reduction, by the way, is a pretty classic French sauce. That's quite versatile. And you will mount it with butter to finish. So okay, at this point we're just going to reserve both of this and check on the fish. So it's been about 12 minutes at 450, and we're going to gently roll the fish over, and you're going to lose the skin on the first side. That's fine. The important thing is the presentation side, which is the side that cooked first, that was exposed to the hot oven first. That side, you want the skin to get crispy. So here's another 12 minutes pass, and we roll the fish back, and as you can see, that initial top side of the skin is still intact. Now we move the rack to the top of the oven, crank the heat to 500, and we're going to crisp the skin for about 5 minutes. Here are the results. Now Tog is quite unique. They have a very fatty skin, and it's going to crisp up almost like pork skin. So while the fish is resting, we're going to marry the two sauces together. So cranberry goes into the wine reduction. Cook that out for maybe a minute, and then off the heat we're going to mount with cold butter. And the cranberry sauce is quite thick, so you can't swirl the butter in, just work it in with a spoon or a whisk. And I prefer this sauce better than a classic cranberry sauce. I always felt like, you know, your normal cranberry sauce just tastes like a jam, like a marmalade that you're gonna put on toast. Anyway, that's your sauce. You set that aside. Now you carefully move your fish to the platter before you go untie these strings. You can present this fish as it is now with the string attached to your guest, just in case, you know, some disaster happens where you're removing the butcher's twine. So very gently peel the string off and slide it out from under the fish. I give it a little wiggle just to make sure that it's not sticking. Yeah, there's your finished product.
That looks like a piece of meat right there.
Yeah.
It looks like a stuffed pork loin.
Here I have a serrated steak knife, and we'll just get a peek inside the fish. Now, it's pretty much boneless. The only bone left in the fish is the top dorsal section.
No.
It's almost like a medieval dish. You can really smell the mushrooms in the duck. Those wood ears really come through. Here, my cousin's gonna
Good.
give it a taste.
Oh.
You got a little cranberry?
Yeah.
Alright.
Damn.
How is it with the cranberry?
Really good.
Is it too tart?
No. But, dude, it tastes like a Thanksgiving feast. It really does.
Nice. Any bones? Cut right through it.
Wow. Dude, you should taste it.
I will, as soon as I put this camera down.
One more. Let's see. Oh,
Oh,
shit.
bone?
Yeah.
God damn.
Damn, son. Sorry. Dude, happy Thanksgiving, man.
Okay, here's some still photos. You know, once again, my cousin did all the filming. He actually purchased a lighting system for this video, and yeah, that's the dish. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and I will see you next week with maybe a pure fishing episode. All right, if you like what you see, please subscribe.